not having the camera there to see if I'm centered doesn't exactly help, so I had to use the mirror, and from what I can see here, let me check real quick. I mean, it looks fine on the mirror. On the camera, obviously, it looks quite different, and I'm also not used to the microphone being on this side, and, oh, there we go, and, let me see, well, I guess it's getting used to the microphone too, and getting used to the fact that, okay, so let's see, what do you call it? Hang on a minute. Ugh. Well, a little behind the scenes look there. I'm so much more used to the microphone being on this side, and of course it always looks weird in the camera, but let's see. So, and then I have to get more centered too, because originally when it records, let me put it this way. Originally, when it records, before it records, it'll show me what I'm about to record on the camera, and then I hit the start recording button, but this time it just came up with a black screen, so not exactly seeing what I was doing didn't quite help, and like I said, it looks fine on the mirror, but on the camera, it looks like I have a bald spot on my eyebrow. And if you saw my video beforehand, I was trying just to record with just trying to get the camera to see what I was doing in terms of my makeup, so kind of using it as a mirror, and I made what I call a hilarious eyebrow mistake, so you have to see the video before this one to kind of get an idea of what I did, and could be that I'm obsessive compulsive, but also it doesn't help that I'm not centered, so let's see if I move here. There we go, I'm a little more centered. And so I applied for 8 internships today. By the way, I wish I had my glasses because, let's see, I really got nothing going on. And so I applied for 8 internships. And I say that because I thought that, okay, I have cerebral palsy, so I thought making a YouTube video would have been innovative. And, everybody pretty much on Facebook, sheesh. Okay, so I got 11 different people liking that I said I applied for 8 different internships, which I did, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm going to have to, have Mom drive me around, and I know how it is with disabilities in this society. If you have a disability, well, there you go. And, that one video on YouTube, I was watching videos on YouTube one day, and I came across this video where this kid had driven drunk, and he got into an accident, and he was 30 years old, and he was in a wheelchair, and he says, how cool is it to have your mom be your best friend? And of course that was a rhetorical question, so obviously it wasn't cool. And I remember when one of my college classmates got jazzed for being in college at 27 years old. He talked about how his friends gave him jazz for that. And I'm sitting there going, oh boy, yep, so my mom's going to have to drive me to these internships and interviews and what have you if I get lucky, if I do get an internship. If I don't, it's like, yeah, you know what, I'm screwed. And so I'm really not happy about what's going on, because it's like, on the one hand, I'll be lucky if I get an internship, let alone a job. On the other hand, it's like my mom's going to have to drive me around and they'll all snicker. And I say that too because the prejudice against the disabled in our society is so great. And I had to correct someone on Twitter. He wasn't being intentional about what he said, but he said, and I forgave him, but I'm just bringing it up so everyone's aware of what's going on, because I'm sure other people have done this too. I'm going to go to my interactions here on Twitter real quick. And like I said, this guy admitted that he messed up, so I'm not holding it against him. I'm just reading what he said so that, other people are going to make this mistake too, I think. And unless he deleted that. Oh, there we go. There we go. So I had yelled at him on Twitter on purpose, and because he said to someone referring to, let's see. Oh, okay. He was referring to people like someone on Twitter that was in a conversation that a few of us were having in reference to the political candidate who said that basically Alzheimer's and other issues are God's way of punishing gay marriage and abortion. And so we were all in that conversation, and the reason that I'm not naming that political candidate, by the way, is that she does not deserve to have her name out there. And anyway, so this guy says, they are not haters, they are indoctrinated gimps. And of course I yelled at him because I'm like, are you serious? I even said to him, I'm like, excuse me? And so it just goes to show that, I mean, he admitted that he didn't know what to determine and what have you. And it's kind of like when African Americans, like the old days, people would say like, oh dude, he's such an N-er. And like people would say like, isn't that a derogatory term against blacks? Oh no, it just means, someone who's kind of stupid, someone who's kind of dumb, someone who is what we would call in Hebrew an ish haaretz. And I can even go look it up in the dictionary right now. If you don't believe me, go to Merriam-Webster's real quick. And so if I type in the N-word, and let's see, one of the definitions is, okay, the first two definitions are, oh dear, wow. Okay, so one of the definitions was, the first two definitions are obviously offensive. The third definition is a member of a socially disadvantaged class of persons. And then if you go to, oh dear, they're really trying to push it here. And let's see, okay, there's an expression, enter in the wood pile. You can pretty much guess what that means. Let's see, let me just do the, oh boy. Okay, let me try this one, Niggard, but you can tell it pretty much shares the same root as far as I know. A meanly covetous and stingy person, and it comes from, let's see, it's akin to Old Norse, but I'm sure the way that we used it in a society, I'm quite sure that there were a few puns made of it, unfortunately. And if we go to the entry for kids or students, it means a mean and stingy person. Unfortunately, I'm quite sure there were a few puns there given. Let's see, it says, and here's the usage discussion of the N-word. It says, one of the excuses in the discussion is, its use by and among blacks is not always intended or taken as offensive, but, except in sense 3, it is otherwise a word expressive of racial hatred and bigotry. And of course, sense 3 is a member of a socially disadvantaged class of persons. And of course, it's like when they called the Poles white N-ers, and first of all, I guarantee that they wouldn't have been calling the Poles that if many of them did not have Jewish heritage, because hey, Poles indigenously do not have dark hair, dark skin, or dark eyes, so it just pretty much shows you that, let's just say, as has been said before, it's amazing how Jews and blacks fight each other a lot because we tend to have so much more in common, including the way that we're discriminated against. So it just goes to show you, like, even any excuse that they make for sense 3, it's like, well, that even when they were comparing Poles, and especially Poles of Jewish or other non-indigenous Polish heritage, to African Americans, you can see that all the definitions of the N-word are pretty racist or intended to be racist. And I'm trying to remember why I was here again. For some reason, it's just like my mind's going off in these directions tonight, but I guess part of it, I don't know if this had to do with it. Let's see. Okay, so we were talking about, okay, I applied. Oh, right, because how the disabled and the G word is comparable to the N word. And a lot of people, unfortunately, as that one guy learned, a lot of people try to mitigate the G word the way that a lot of people would try to mitigate the N word. And so that's definitely why I'm worried about not getting an internship or a job, especially because people say, you know what, kid, you're disabled. Next! And they say that they don't discriminate against the disabled. And I'm going to post the link to this really quickly in the description because I think that this is a good video. And, you know, Mom says that, oh, they don't discriminate against the disabled as much nowadays. As I told Mom, you know, they don't discriminate against us in the ways that they did back then, but it's still the same way. It's just in different ways. So it's not that it's any easier for disabled people. It's back then, for lack of a better term, we were squirreled away. We were kicked in the closet, basically. We were brushed under the rug. Now we're open targets. And with State Senator Wendy Davis of Texas just totally making fun of Attorney General Greg Abbott, you could see that, like she said, he hasn't walked she, of course, is making a deliberate pun. She was saying he hasn't walked a mile in my shoes or a day in my shoes, and that was obviously intended to be a pun because he is paraplegic. And I mentioned this too, and it still makes me angry, and I don't know how true this is, but unfortunately, having been a long-time fan of Geraldo Rivera's, at least for a long time in my lifetime, apparently Geraldo, who worked with kids at Willowbrook and who knows better, apparently, can't believe I'm saying this, apparently dismissed Greg Abbott with a pun and called him, quote-unquote, handicapable, as in a golfer is handicapable or a politician is handicapable, as in you can analyze them and see what their weaknesses are. And of course, Geraldo made a pun of that, apparently, and then he endorsed Wendy Davis. And I don't know how true that is, but I did say to Geraldo on Twitter, I'm like, dude, if you really said that, you know better. But it just goes to show you that the attitude toward the disabled in our society has not changed, and in fact, in some ways, it's gotten even worse. Because, like I said, we're no longer squirreled away in the closet, or if we are, we're squirreled away more openly, like that poor Marine who had that terrible time on that plane. And a lot of people were upset about that, but it's debatable about whether it was an accident or on purpose, and they were just trying to squirrel him away and all that. But I mean, like, if they do square us away or squirrel us away, it's certainly more open now. And if they don't squirrel us away, they use us as moving targets. I mean, how many times as open and moving targets? I mean, how many times, if you watch Family Guy, and I've seen clips of it, how many times do they make jokes involving, I believe his name is Joe, I don't watch Family Guy much, but how many times do they make jokes about Joe? And how many times, I mean, even it's so ingrained into our culture, even, I'm not going to name names, but I have a relative who is using a common expression, and this shows you how it shows you how ingrained it is in our culture. She was saying that a friend of hers was, I think it had to do with, her hearing. She said, "Oh, you're so hard of hearing," or whatever, in terms of that her friend couldn't hear what she was saying, and then she got really angry because, truth be told, the friend did turn out to have some hearing issues. Or actually, it's one of the two, like I said, because the issue might have been, that's why I'm trying to be careful and say it was either or. She apparently had some vision issues, and so this relative said, "Well, you're as blind as bad," or something, and that's when she got really angry because she might have had eye problems. Or it was something like that. Maybe I'm mixing up incidents, but I do remember that relative using the expression "blind as a bat" one time. Or it might have been like, I could be wrong, it might have been like deaf as a bat or something. I remember that something was definitely involved. It just goes to show you how ingrained the prejudice against the disabled is in our culture. And I can tell you, unfortunately, I can't believe I'm confessing this on YouTube, disabled people like me are not immune from the prejudices that society directs against disabled people. I mean, at least I know there have been times where I have not been different than those who discriminate against me, and whether it's in thought or words or... So, believe me, it's like, even, I guess it is comparable to when African Americans call each other the N-word. It's, just as bad. And, oh, the link to the video too. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and post it. And I'm not sure if it's really supposed to be on here anyway, but they go ahead and post it. And I'm sure that, or at least I hope that, oh God help me, I hope that ABC is okay with their video being uploaded and all that on YouTube. And not that I uploaded this stuff, by the way. I'm just putting the link in the description. And I guess my mind's bouncing all over the place right now too, because I have ADD. And that was one of the criticisms that I got when I did the interview seeking video. They were like, "You're too personal." Well, excuse you, had I not been honest, then I would have been screwed for that. So it's like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. And someone was talking about someone having depression, and they're like, or it might have been in reference to me, or it might have been in reference, whatever she was saying though, she was hoping that, she was saying that, she was hoping that the stigma in terms of mental conditions and mental illnesses, and in terms of people who have those mental conditions and mental illnesses, would end soon. And I mean, a lot of times too, in society, you hear people say like, "Oh, you're crazy," or "Oh, you're," forgive my usage for this word, but I've seen it recently. You hear people say, "Oh, you're retarded," or, "Well, excuse me, I really do have a cousin who's mentally disabled," and that's part of the reason why, if I don't, I should get insulted by the term libtard. And I've seen so many people use it, and because it's like, you know what? I have a cousin who can't choose whether he's liberal or conservative, and to call liberals who have made their decision to be liberal for whatever reason retarded is insulting to my cousin. And there are other people who are mentally disabled who, if they could understand, would be insulted that just because someone politically disagrees with someone, they're going to call them, for lack of a better term, disabled or handicapped. And it's just amazing how... And that's another thing, too, that makes me mad. People say, "Well, you should be an advocate for the disabled." I'm like, really? So you're going to define me by my disability? Thanks. I thought that maybe my disability would have been a part of my story, but to be defined by that, to be boxed in by that, well, thank you very much. At least you let me know where I stand. You're going to define me by my disability in the same way that, for example, Martin Luther King was defined by his skin color. And while Martin Luther King chose to be defined by his skin color in some ways because he did become an advocate for African American people and really for all people, he had a dream where someone's skin color would just become a part of their story and not be the only factor to define them. And it's just amazing. It's like, ultimately, it's really, and ultimately it should be your worldview mixed with your story that defines you. Even if you look at, oh, you know what? The good thing is, this is the talit katan that my mom made for me. So this is the first one. It's drying right now. But look at, for example, even tzitzit. And let me make sure that's still recording and all that. And just look at tzitzit, okay? Tzitzit, you see the blue and the white weave together, and then some people, for tzitzit, they go kind of, for lack of a better term, they go kind of, I'll be honest, I was about to say they go kind of crazy, but that's not appropriate given what I just talked about. They get very creative, or very interesting, I should rather say, and they use all kinds of colors in their tzitzit. And actually, I was looking at tzitzit on Etsy a while back, and I was like, some tzitzit I can't buy because they don't have techelet in them. And some people would say, oh, by the way, aren't you being legalistic? You're under the new covenant after all. I'm like, oh, if it's an optional mitzvah and I can observe it and what have you, then why not? And, I'm proud of my Jewish heritage, and I'm looking at my tzitzit right now, and this is all my other talit katan. And anyway, so there's much more that defines me than my disability. And unfortunately, though, people are not going to see that because there's so much prejudice against the disabled in society, and even in our language, and even by people who don't intend to discriminate against the disabled. It's like in the same way when Martin Luther King was defined by his skin color, except he chose to be defined by his skin color in terms of helping those who did have his skin color, and in terms of helping others, so that eventually people wouldn't be defined just by their skin color, but then their skin color could be a bigger part of their story. Just like you can't really have tzitzit without both threads. It says, tzitzit you shall make on the corners of your garments. But if you don't, just techelet alone would not suffice. You need at least something else. If it just said tzitzit techelet, or just techelet, then okay, but, you could, techelet was going to be the main factor, but you could have other threads, and that's what a person is supposed to be. Maybe there's one main factor that defines them, but that shouldn't be the only factor. And of course, the main factor, I would imagine, is going to be their worldview, or the thing that really sticks out, because ultimately your worldview is a reflection of who you are, and ultimately your worldview is whatever else. Anyway, I think I've spoken for long enough, 24 minutes. Yeah, sorry that I bored you that long, but I hope you get my point. Take care, and have a good Erev Shabbat. And the month of Adar is coming up soon, so Chodesh Tov.